Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Thank you, David. That was lovely. And a great reminder, because we are so much more than we see out here in the mirror. Even the intellectual musings of our own minds and our own judgments and criticism and values and all the stuff that we do to ourselves, and then we project out into the world as well, because it's just hard being human. It's just hard having all this power and not knowing what to do with it. And so we're practicing that with Deepak Chopra's book, The Third Jesus, following a path that Deepak is helping to illuminate in his book from a kind of a different unitive perspective of Jesus' teachings that are in fact advancing us to enlightenment. In this section that I'll be covering tonight, as I've called it Opening to the Path, is in this particular part of it, he's lifted verses of Jesus' teachings and created exercises to use to open one's consciousness to a higher vibration. Time doesn't allow me to really go into all of it or to do the practices with you. So I recommend the book to you if that sounds of interest to you. But I did want to touch on some of the things, some pieces that I think are familiar to you in terms of Jesus' teachings, and to hear maybe just a little twist to how you could hear them differently. And allow ourselves to recognize the implications as evolving students of truth and followers of the life and teachings of Jesus. And so the first one that he begins with is, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And in his interpretation, he says, it's the source of reality. The source of reality is inside of you. It is your essence. It's the kingdom of heaven we thought of as being a place where God lives, or a place we go to after we die, and whatever our theology or theological teaching has been. But Jesus never meant that. Jesus always meant the kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness. For those who can see it, it lays all about you. It's between you. It's among you, he said. And it is within you. And so the source of reality that's inside of us is, in fact, our very being. It's our essence. It isn't a thing planted. It's not foreign. It's not an alien body. It's not something that we're going to discover or draw to ourselves or from the outside in or become. It's something we already are and that we are simply revealing. We're simply becoming more conscious. We're simply letting it come into expression. Deepak says, the consciousness hidden behind your thoughts is the consciousness that upholds all intelligence in the universe. It is personal and collective at the same time. The personal is made up of your relationships, and the collective is made up of the myths and the archetypes common to all cultures. Both dimensions are you. And you can begin to connect the two as a bridge to the sacred within you. So being aware that there's we can touch both places, the archetypes, the collective sacred imagery, that I invited you to consider. Whatever image came up for you, whatever has had most meaning for you in your own mind, is your mythology. It is your sacred religion. It is where what means something to you. It is your relationship with the sacred, with the divine. And the meditation that I used tonight, just a minute ago, is the exercise for this grounding this idea actually into your consciousness and into your conscious awareness. And to give yourself a useful tool to refer to throughout the day. You know, you don't have to wait and get all, situated and sacred and light a candle and ring a bowl or do anything special. You can just take a break. You can just look out the window. You can just take a breath. 3 breaths, preferably, but 3 connected breaths. Look out the window, and in a moment, you can be right there again. You can be right there. You can touch it. Why? Because it hasn't gone anywhere. It's right here. So this relationship is something you can cultivate and something you can rely on and something you can lean on. Another scriptural verse that Deepak chooses is, be in the world, but not of it, as Jesus said. And Deepak translates that as, through detachment, you master both inner and outer reality. So in other words, not being of the world is to do what I just suggested. That instead of being engaged in what's in front of you and what's yanking your chain and what's calling you on the phone, what's texting you, what's ringing my watch right now, whatever it is, instead of being rung up by the world, you could look out the window. You could just depart for a moment. You could close your eyes. You could simply remember who you really are. And touch it by just going deep inside. It's not going to be out here. This is your true north. This is what is really the grounding of your being. It will not lead you astray. And it's always at peace. Your heart might be pounding, but underneath and behind your heart is your heart center, is your center of being. It's the gyroscope around which your soul navigates. Deepak says, you are more real than the material world and closer to the creative source. So going here is going to the essence of everything. It's not an escape. It's not a trick of the mind. It's not a manipulation. It's not to accomplish anything or do anything. It's really simply to remember. Because as soon as you do and as soon as you reconnect, then everything else you do, when you reemerge, is holier, more aligned. And when I say holier, I don't mean holier than thou. I mean whole. I mean connected. I mean full. I mean real and true, authentic. And wouldn't you rather stand behind those words than the words you thought up, that you dreamed up, that you reacted in an emotional moment? Wouldn't you rather say the most authentic thing, piece of truth you know? Deepak chose, for number 3, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He calls this, life becomes more effortless as you move closer to God consciousness. My yoke is easy and my burden is light, Jesus told his disciples. He says, you strive too much, you work too hard. You're making a bigger deal out of this than it has to be. If you remember who you really are, then everything gets simpler. It gets easier. You're supported. Strength comes through. The truth becomes clear. I remember in ministerial school, I was contemplating this. As a Catholic, I heard all of these. The Gospels I was really well versed in. I didn't know much about the rest of the Bible, but the Gospels I knew. I'd heard those over and over throughout my life. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light always sounded like such a gift, such a relaxation. You wanted to hang out with that Jesus, It's like, yes, I want to follow you in that. That sounds awesome. And then it occurred to me, my yoke is easy. So what I'm calling you to, the thing I'm asking you to put on is ease. And the burden that I'm handing you, it's light. It's light. Now that's the guy I really want to know, right? That's really what I want to remember. flowing with a sense of groundedness in the solid bedrock of your soul, this thing that we practice doing this evening, you begin to draw strength from something solid and deep within yourself. It is union with all. It is not personal. It's not personal. It's not just you, but it's through you. It is every bit you, and yet universal. And it infills your own being every moment and has an infinite source as well. And that infinite source draws everything you need to know, everything you need to use to create, whatever idea, whatever it is that's next for you, it comes through that same portal. Deepak also chose, ask and you will receive. He says, all fulfillment comes from within. Ask and you will receive. Deepak says that this teaching is greater than it appears. He says, this ask and you will receive is not a quid pro quo. It isn't asking for a red Corvette and expecting to see the very thing itself manifested, but rather that we ask and then stay alert to whatever form the response from the universe comes, whatever arrives for us. To stay alert to what that putting that energy out is now giving back. Because the universe always responds. Every prayer is always answered. It is us that expected a very specific way for that to show up. And Deepak gives this example. He says, if you pray to be healed from sickness, for instance, and any and all of the following possibilities could be possible. He says, you recover completely and spontaneously. That could be the response. Or that current medical treatment is effective. So everything continues to work out. He says, or your condition shows signs of improving faster than normal, or with fewer side effects and lingering, or any trauma lingering. He says, or you could become more confident that you'll recover and experience greater ease. Your fear and anxiety over being sick begins to lessen. Could look like that. A sense of peace comes over you. It might look like that. Or you simply gain acceptance. And that's the answer you receive. So by being open and alert to these array of responses, some of which are inner and others outer, he says you escape the dichotomy of God healed me or God didn't heal me. It isn't either or. There is always an answer. Every prayer is one tiny part of an eternal journey, he says. In reality, the journey has countless nuances. Every single event is interconnected with every other. There's not a single thing. It's not just my sickness over here, and my bills and my finances over there, and my relationship over here, and my family, don't get me started, over there. It's all connected seamlessly. Because everything is connected. Because we're one with everything that is. He says, in reality, every single event is interconnected and all fulfillment is from within. Because every event begins and ends at the level of the soul. Then he chose, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Yeah, I knew we were going to get to forgiveness, didn't you? Yeah, we can't get past Jesus without getting to a forgive thing. Deepak says, suffering is rooted in unreality. You can go beyond suffering by seeking what is real. Suffering is not caused by what condition or situation or event or thing has happened. we think it is. We link it to that. We try to not let that happen again, not let that person come back. We try to stop it where we can see a causal outside of us root. But in truth, it's our reaction. It is what comes up in us. It's what we make it mean. It's how long we choose to suffer. It's how long we choose to hang on to it before we really learn how to let go, which brings us back to forgiveness, of course. Forgiveness is not. This is Karen Tudor now. I put my own name by these just so I don't mar Deepak's his reputation by making it sound like he said this. The truth that was here all along in this, and the truth that was here all along in this, and bringing them together. And when you do that, the need to forgive falls away. There's nothing to forgive, because the truth has already reconciled itself. And the error and the incomplete way I was seeing it has fallen from my eyes. And I see that it was always here. This is the essential tool of the spiritual path. You cannot make any progress in your spiritual life unless you become adept and fearless and willing to forgive and let go of everything. Because if you have difficulty forgiving, it is not optional to find workarounds in your spiritual life. Good luck. I don't think you'll find it. We'll always come back to this. Life will continue to provide ample opportunities to practice this art that enlarges your heart, growing in understanding of self and others, and in ultimately learning the secret of life. Every life experience is a letting go. Forgiveness. Then he says, he picks up the thing from Jesus, so do not worry about tomorrow. Trust in the organizing power of the universe, Deepak says. In other words, divine order. Don't worry about tomorrow. There's a bigger scheme. There's a bigger plan. There's something greater going on than the little bit of to-dos that you have figured out for tomorrow. You do have some responsibility, and it may not be what you think it is. And the situation and conditions will call different things out of you when you meet up with them when 8 o'clock rolls around after all, right? Which isn't to say not to have a plan, because I'm a list maker too. But you have to be ready, as always, to pivot, right? So begin to live with your eyes lifted up to the fields white with harvest. What is coming into being in the lay of the land before you? Look for it, anticipate it, so you can prepare the way for it. And don't have to work so hard undoing what has been done to make way for the new thing coming into being. Deepak chose another line. Abide in me as I abide in you, and the Father and I are one. These two scriptural pieces, these two assertions of Jesus. Abide in me as I abide in you. I love that abiding. That's not just a momentary coming together. Abiding is living. Live in me as I live in you. I'll be here through the turmoil, through the drought, through the heat of the pyramid, through the changing weather, through the changing issues in our lives, through our changing minds, through our changing bodies. Abide in me as I abide in you. Deepak says you'll be free when you no longer see yourself in isolation. He picks up another one. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. He translates it as spiritual power increases as people gather together. On Sunday, Reverend David Alexander's workshop really brought that home in a really powerful way. I think he alluded to it in in the service, but he really underlined it in the workshop. It was important and for me, and it was a liberating principle. He says that the errors created in collective mind must be corrected and healed in collective mind. That's why I'm just not a big enough soul all by myself to just force it out there and get peace in the world, or just solve that problem, or if only I would mean what I said, sure, there's something else I could make happen out there, right? I'm a failure every time I see the things I don't want to see out in the world. And that's just hubris and ridiculous, and I'm operating at the wrong level. It's collective mind. It's collective. We're a collection, and that just bears witness to the idea that we need to come together. We need to find ways to come together, to bridge ourselves to each other, because spiritual power increases as people gather together. And our spiritual power becomes magnified in the presence of other committed people whose hearts are on fire with intention to serve and to heal our world. We're not talking about methodologies, ways to do it, only what it is we want to see. And we want to see it, we will. So admit it, you're on a path. Because you're hearing this message now, at this moment, affirms that you're on a path of growth and deeper understanding. No matter what you thought was happening, the door was already opened in you. The visions, the crazy new ideas, the synchronicities, the incredibly hard life lessons, the sudden insights, all are hallmarks of the journey on the inside, made manifest on the outside. You're living it already. And let me tell you, your light is showing. Namaste.
Thank you for that message and meditation, and I really enjoyed the meditation and the visualization of the sacred, and I had this vision of the whole world actually when we were trying to visualize. I didn't want to make it a thing, like an angel or something, but it was just to visualize the whole world, and then points of light coming together all over the world, being connected, coming like up and from above and from below. It's heartening, So that message of that, we start with ourselves and allow that to emerge from who we are. It's the kingdom of God is within us.
Yeah.
So thank you. That's very timely. I'm so glad you brought up the workshop too, because
it was good.
I was at the workshop as well.
It was really good.
I appreciate your bringing to our attention that our inner peace is not conditional. That it's not that you got to get it right in order to be in a state of connectedness, to be on the path. I don't say that I necessarily experience it all the time, but enough. I remember there being a time in my life where I was stuck in traffic and thinking, if I were just in a meditative state, this wouldn't bother me at all. And the moment I realized that I was thinking that, I thought, well, okay, it's there for the taking, and I can kind of call it forth. Now that said, I also think that there's something to be said for the spiritual practice. I'm just speaking for myself here, but when I knew that I was coming here tonight, and I'm thinking, what I say here, I'm talking about this hour that we give to each other. Quite literally, we create this space together. When I knew that I was going to be here, it affected that moment. It wasn't just the getting ready so that I can be here tonight. It's just that because of the spiritual practice of being here on a regular basis, then I was able to breathe into it in a different way. And I think that's part of our spiritual practice as well. And I'll go one step further, and I would say moving into this different space, it's not an accident that we're surrounded by the art that we're surrounded by, and the shape of the room, the colors of the carpet, all of these things are creating an attention on a spiritual indwelling, if I can use all those words together, so that it's a touchstone. So it is available to us in moments of altercation, or conflict or confusion or whatever. It's just like, no, wait a minute, I have a frame of reference that equips me for all circumstances. It's a little bit bold and audacious to suggest that this experience prepares me for all states, but it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. What I get here and what I practice here prepares me for other things that happen in my life.
Well said. I mean, the practice itself simply routinizes it for us. We remember it sooner, faster. We know where to go find it. It's in here, and it's really I'm always surprised that I still think it's going to happen out there. That I'm still waiting for the perfect alignment of every condition and situation to bring me peace.
Right.
How foolish. The peace is already here. It's always been here. And the thing of it is to rely on it. And how far down do you have to dig for it? That shows you how far afield you have gone before you go, oh yeah, that's right. But when you practice it, it's a breath away.
Exactly. If you're aware that you're not in that state of grace, then the moment that you have the awareness, you have to indulge in not being there. You have to kind of commit to being on it. Whereas the moment you're aware of it, you're liberated of it. The same is true of forgiveness. When you realize you're harboring resentment or some sort of ill will against another human being, the moment you notice it, if you're committed to living on the path, then the moment you notice it, that's the same as letting go of it. If you commit to it, and I strive for that.
Right. You're so right. It's the waking up is the pivotal moment. It's the miracle moment, and after that, it's process. It's commitment to a process, and depending on how big of a deal this act is or this experience is to us, determines perhaps how long it may take or how much it may take or how many times we have to work with it or whatever. It's simply the magnitude of the injury perhaps or the experience of the injury or how many other times it's happened, because you're probably on a path of forgiving a whole lump sum of accumulated unforgiveness around a wound or an injury, and be respectful of your own process. It may take time. It's not an easy decision to make, even once you make the decision. And yet, it's so worth it, because what happens is that once we're willing to let go of and really process through, sharing with every tool we know, with people we trust, with people who are wiser than us, people who can help us. Once we do, the amazing, amazing thing is that this wasn't an isolated column of pain in you. It had tendrils, and it was connected to things you didn't even know were being affected by that unforgiveness. And when you do that, whole floors of your consciousness are cleared out that you weren't even thinking about. You weren't even thinking about that relationship, and suddenly it's not a problem anymore. How did that happen? Somehow this thing over here was interfering with that over there. The work is worth it,
The collective we that David Alexander also talked about is the next step for humanity. That, like you're talking about, the tendrils, it's all connected. And so that next step is sort of taking responsibility as humanity for all of the healing that we need to do within that also affects the external as well.
It's true. you know, we're doing this work together. And, you know, everybody is a partner, a potential partner, whether they know us, whether they want to be, whether they're doing their work. I mean, they're a player, because if I see them, if I'm in it, if I'm interacting, then they're a part of my picture, a part of my story. I can be assured of that. So I think this is amazing, and it's powerful for us all to remember that there is a lot of power that we have when we're feeling the least powerful. Just trust and know that there's something you forgot.
And we build momentum together.
Mm-hmm.
So nice to have people on the spiritual walk,
Mm-hmm.
sharing space.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.